What risks would you take if you felt unstoppable? Would you launch a podcast, write a book, give a TED talk, launch a new business venture? Well, today on Coffee and Conversation, we will reveal the 4 barriers to becoming an unstoppable entrepreneur. But I'm not on this quest alone. I'm going to introduce myself and my fellow What Now movement colleagues. So, starting with myself, I'm Eric Twiggs. I am the CEO of the What Now movement. And joining me, we have Dr. Sharon H. Porter. She's the VP of Media Communications. We have Ted Fells, who's the VP of Strategy, and he's wearing his glasses today, so you better watch out. He's got all kinds of stuff that's going to come out today. You better watch. When he has his glasses on, you better brace yourself. And there you go. And we have Maisha Hoy, who is apparently the chief officer of Fly Eagles Fly. Any explanations? I mean, I see you got it there. You want to share something with us?
Well, if everyone who knows, follows football knows what Fly Eagles Fly means, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. Woo! So congratulations, Philly.
All right, she's the chief officer of Fly Eagles Fly, and I'm hating right now because
I am joining you in hating.
Right. Yeah. We're all hating right now. That's why I brought that up.
The world is hating, and we are used to it. So.
Right, because I support another team in that same division that's not going to the Super Bowl. That's a whole other podcast for another day. But when she's not the chief Fly Eagles Fly officer, she is the chief marketing officer. She's all things marketing. So we've got a team, and you really can't move forward without having an effective team. And I can honestly say that we have an effective team, and I have effective partners here with the What Now movement. And I know you're asking, okay, well, how did this whole What Now movement thing get started? How did we get here? Well, it was a dark and stormy night, and now this started with myself, Ted Fells, and Dr. Sharon H. Porter. We saw that we were doing different things in different arenas that we respected. And we looked at Dr. Sharon; she was doing big things with her books and everything else. And Ted and I were having success with the podcast. We had Dr. Sharon on the podcast, and we said, you know what, we need to find a way to work together. So our original plan was to get into these different venues and have these conferences and master classes in person, get people in the room, and we'd inspire people to take it to the next level. That was our plan. That was how we were going to work together. But then this thing called the global pandemic happened, and that changed everything, because now the ballrooms and the hotel conference rooms are all shut down. You couldn't get together, and we literally had to ask ourselves, what now? And then we started talking amongst ourselves, and we noticed that people in our network were saying things like, hey, I have this idea for this great venture. I have this real thing I want to launch, but I'm going to wait until things get back to normal. We looked at each other. We said, that's the last thing people need to do. Instead of waiting, they need to ask themselves, what now? So the key thing, our mission is to help people to pivot when they face a struggle, when they face an adversity. And don't just stop. You have to ask yourself, what now? What can you do now? What pivots can you make? And that's how we got to this point of the What Now movement. So we present to you offerings like Coffee and Conversation on the first Saturday of every month. This is something that Maisha just loves. We have these themed alliteration days that we do daily in the What Now movement group, where we have someone present inspirational content that will inspire you to ask yourself what now and make the necessary pivots. We also have master classes. Matter of fact, we've got an exciting master class we're going to talk to you about here in a little bit. But that's how we got to this point with the What Now movement. As far as our topic for today, It's the 4 barriers to becoming an unstoppable entrepreneur. Now, these principles, they're based off of my book, The Discipline of Now, 12 Practical Principles to Overcome Procrastination. That's what this is based off of, these principles. And really, there's one big barrier that keeps people from being unstoppable. There's one really big one. I talk about this in the book, and that's fear. Right. Fear is really the big thing that stops people, but there are 4 common fears that we're going to unpack today, and hopefully we can break down these barriers. And really, when you're walking around fearless, you're unstoppable. You can't be stopped. If you're not scared, you can't be stopped. So let's think about that. But so we're going to break each of these down. And so the first fear that we'll talk about is the fear of success. That's the first fear we're going to talk about. And you may be saying, well, why would somebody be scared to succeed? That just sounds crazy, Twig. What is up with that? So the fear of success is a common thing where people are afraid of what the next level will bring. Will they be able to measure up? Do they really have the goods? This is a common thing with the people I work with, this idea of the fear of success. I'll give a quick example, and then I'm going to throw it to Dr. Sharon, where she can add some insights on this fear of success thing. But I have a friend of mine. She has a doctorate in psychology. Pretty impressive. She has a doctorate in psychology, but when she goes out, she never introduces herself as Dr. Lisa. I just made up a name, Lisa. She never introduces herself as Dr. Lisa. Why? Because she's afraid that people are going to have these expectations of her when they know that she's a doctor. And deep down, she's afraid that she may not be able to measure up. They may ask her some high-level question that she doesn't have the answer to, or they may ask her something about her background and she's afraid she doesn't have the goods. So that's a classic example of the fear of success, that if you don't get your arms around it, it can become a barrier for you getting what you want. So Dr. Sharon, we're talking about the fear of success. What comes to mind for you?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And yes, congratulations, Philly. Just had to say that. So you're right. Fear of success is definitely one of those things you like, what? People are scared to succeed. And actually, after further investigating, Forbes gave a list of 10 reasons why people become fearful of success. And I just wanted to highlight 3 of those things. The first one was the fear of not being good enough. And so and you hear a lot about it. Imposter syndrome is what comes to mind when I hear that. And that truly is a thing. That truly is one of the reasons why people are afraid to move forward. Just as you said, the expectations, Twigs. They don't feel that they belong. They don't feel that they're good enough to be in that space. And so that is a deterrent from moving forward. If you don't feel like that you are due to be at the table where you are, then you're going to hinder yourself. And sometimes it's not consciously. That's the thing with fear of success. It's not always that you know that you have a fear to succeed, but you do these things to hinder your success because you do have that. The second one that I wanted to highlight, the reason why people fear to succeed, is the fear of spotlight. I absolutely love that because that was the one for me. That's why I started out podcasting, not with the video, truly podcasting with the audio, because I didn't want people to see me. I didn't want to be seen. And so the fear of spotlight, I'm a background girl. I've always been a background girl, and to put me up front gave me so much anxiety. And so that's the one that made me think of, wow, that's really a good one, because if you don't want to be up front, you don't want to be up front, and you have to learn to do that. So it is doable to learn to step out and be the lead and not the follower. The last one that I wanted to talk about actually is quite interesting. It's the fear of change. And I know that's a whole big one actually by itself. And so change is a different, to me, that's a whole one by itself, because we know that people don't like change. But with success comes change, because you have to move from one level to the next. And so if you're not comfortable with change, sometimes you're often stopped and riddled by not wanting to go to the next level. So I just wanted to highlight those three things of why people are fearful of succeeding. And so I thought that they were right on. Forbes gave 10 things. I just wanted to pick out the things that resonated with me mostly.
Man, that is fantastic. That's fantastic. So you talked about the fear of not being good enough, the fear of the spotlight, and the fear of change. But I did want to briefly go back to something you talked about, the imposter syndrome, because every successful person I've been around has mentioned dealing with this at some point. As a matter of fact, I can relate to having the imposter syndrome. It's this. I remember I used to tell my parents, we would have these back. I'd work in corporate America, and we'd have these big meetings, and my regional manager and my vice president would be at these meetings, and I would tell my parents, you know what? They're going to find out I really don't know what I'm talking about. I'm getting these awards, and everybody's patting me on the back, and they want me to do all these presentations, but they're going to find out, yeah. So that is real. And one of the things I think that helps with imposter syndrome, because what causes it is you don't realize what's really driving your success because it comes natural to you. For example, the reason you're succeeding could be that you're an excellent listener, right? You're a fantastic listener. So people trust you and they engage with you, but you discount that because it comes natural to you. So I just really pay attention to that, because a lot of successful people struggle with that imposter syndrome. Pay attention to those things that come natural to you. You don't give it credit, but that's what's really driving your success. So yeah, very important if you're really trying to take it to the next level. Thank you, Dr. Sharon. Ted, what are your thoughts on this idea of fear of success?
My thoughts are pretty simple that Dr. Sharon took my thoughts. Right. So, and I'm like, oh, Eric gonna come back to me. Like I had change in my mind. I was like, yeah, change. And she said, then the last one is the fear of change. I said, I told you. So I don't have anymore. I'm just gonna just say ditto to what Dr. Sharon said, right? That change is a big one, right? I mean, you got your new business going and now, but you're used to getting a check every 2 weeks. You're used to that, right? So now it's like, okay, I got to get away from knowing a check is coming every 2 weeks, whether I'm on or not, right? But now I'm doing my own thing, right? I got to make sure I get a check every 2 weeks. That's change, right? That's scary. If you don't have fear with that, then okay, you know what? If I don't do what I need to do, or if my clients pay late, like that's a change. That's not something that I'm used to. I'm used to all that being taken care of, and I just focus on just the work, right? I mean, that's a big thing when you're an entrepreneur, right? You're used to just focusing on whatever the work thing is. You're used to just focusing on a new marketing strategy. Now you got to focus on not the marketing strategy, but getting the clients and getting a check, right? And being responsible for paying others, right? These other people are dependent on you. Because some people, they'll say that, oh man, I don't want these people depending on me. Their livelihoods are dependent on me. Well, that's what happens. You go to the boss place. So yeah, that fear of change is a big one. So I just agree with everything Dr. Sharon put out there. She didn't leave any meat on the bone.
No, she didn't. But no, so that fear of change is real, because it's like, okay, what is this? Is this change going to present something that I'm not prepared for? Yeah, I was great when I was getting the check and everybody was telling me, my boss was giving me structure and direction, but what's going to happen when I'm the one that has to give the structure and direction? Do I really measure up? So I think that fear of change is a big deal. All right, Maisha, what are your thoughts?
So I think for me, it's the imposter syndrome. More particularly when I look at others, comparing myself to others, right out the gate. The first thing that happened to me, I wanted to call myself the small biz lady, and one of my now peers in Philadelphia was the small biz lady. So I was like, oh, how will I ever reach what she's already doing when she's already smarter than me because she took the name I wanted, she took the URL I wanted, she wanted everything. So that was a big change, a big fear that I had to overcome because I compared myself to her. And what I created was my Isha's Lemonade Stand, which is unique and different and special and grows year over year. But that was one of the key things I had to overcome, looking at others who are doing what I'm doing and saying, can I do it? How does she do it? Can I do the same thing? And it also, that manifested itself. I don't go after awards. I've run many successful marketing campaigns. And I receive awards by other people recognizing what I've done. But for me, I was like, I need to start, and I must do this in 2023, putting it out there, and using that fear of comparing myself and see, how does this marketing campaign land against others? But I could tell through my life that was one of the things that stops me from being unstoppable. My fear of being out there and putting my information out there and winning and losing based off of that information. So everyone get over that. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that you mentioned the whole thing about putting yourself out there. That is what troubled me with the book. Because when you write a book, it's just out there. And it's like, oh man, yeah, I think it's a great idea. The little test group, they think, but what if everybody hates it? What if that's a challenge? That whole fear of putting yourself out there, and how are people going to respond? And you hit on something else about this comparison thing. I think you do have to be careful to not make unhealthy comparisons. You're looking at someone's front stage and comparing it to your backstage, and you don't really have the full perspective. But fear of success is something that really holds you back. And one of the things I talk about in the book and in my teachings on the fear of success is the be, do, have formula. It's called the be, do, have formula. So if I can become more, I can do more. If I can do more, I can have more. So if you really focus on becoming more, you're not going to have as much of that fear of success, because you're ready for what the next level is going to present.
Mr. Twix, could you repeat that?
It's be, do, have. That's the formula. So if I can become more, that's the first step. Okay. What can I do to become more? Doing that. Is it reading, taking classes, networking in the right group? What does that look like? If I can become more, I can do more. Then as I'm doing more, I can ultimately have more. So you have to focus on the becoming. That's the key. Do something every day to get better. Even if it's a small, tiny step, that's just going to, you'll feel like you deserve the success. That's really what's going to happen. When you become more, you'll feel deserving of the success and less likely to suffer from imposter syndrome. All right. So I think, so Dr. Sharon, looks like we're having a technical issue when she dropped off. Maybe she's going to get some more big boulders. Dr. Sharon has dropped off to get some big boulders for this next segment. We'll definitely welcome her when she comes back on. So we talked about the fear of success. We also need to talk about the fear of failure. And this is huge, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, but a lot of times when it comes to the fear of failure, we're asking ourselves like these questions that start with what if. Let's say you're about to do a presentation. Well, what if it doesn't go well? What if I bomb? What if I don't get what if I don't get the promotion? What if this? What if that? So what if that tells us that really your fear is in the future, right? So what if? Because it hasn't happened yet. And so if one thing that helps a lot of the people that I work with and I coach, when they realize that fear isn't really in their present reality, it's really in the future, because you're projecting. And if you look back, you check the record, most of the time things work out. those things when you sat up and said, "Oh man, I've got this big presentation proposal with this company, Ted," and oh, what if? Now, it's usually worked out. So that's a key thing to think about when it talks about the we talk about the fear of failure. So this time, Ted, I'm going to throw it to you first, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences around this fear of failure thing.
It's interesting. I don't think I've ever really had a fear of failure, right? But I remember someone said to me one time after a tough week, they said, "Have you ever thought about quitting?" And I said, and I was like, no. He said, "Are you afraid that the people that we know will think you are a failure?" And I was like it really kind of caught me off guard because it was someone that was kind of close to me. And I said, so first thing, God's not going to let me fail. So I'm not even worried about that, right? And the second thing, I don't care about what people think. Right? Because you'll be surprised that the people that look at you and they're like, man, I could have never done that. You left your job. Like, you left your job to do this, and now 20 plus years later, I've been blessed to be able to continue to be able to pay myself a check, right? Pay my, sometimes a little shaky, Maisha, but I've been able to 20 years, been able to, to pay myself, right? So the whole thing about, being afraid of what others think. I mean, you'd be surprised that there's so many people that have said things to me that have been so positive that they just look at you and they admire you. And man, I just knew you could do it. You stuck it out and da-da-da. Like they're watching. Like I think I have more people cheering for me than I have, waiting to see me fail. And either way, I'm not thinking much again about what they're thinking. I'm just staying focused on what I'm doing. Because it takes a lot we all have these ideas, but it takes a lot for you to act on those ideas. And like you said, you can get when I look at someone that's written a book, I'm like, man, that's you got that done, right? Somebody starts a business, right? You got that done, right? Or a podcast, man, you got that done. It went from just being a thought and talking to action, right? When you see somebody making that move to get that thing done, there's just respect there. I mean, whether you sell one book or a million books, I mean, you got a book out there, right? You got a podcast, you just, watch the numbers. Like I remember, Eric, there was only our family and friends on there. And when our family and friends had something else to do, that was disappointing. What you mean? Cousin Johnny, you can't check out our podcast. I got something else to do today, Maisha. I got something else to do. And then when you start getting to a point, you got 600,000 downloads, and you're like, man, I don't know 600,000 people. That's got to be some people I don't know. So you just gotta. Once you get it out there and you just start moving, podcast, book, business, whatever, just get it out there. Activate it. Right. And then, just keep grinding. And it's not, it's not about, any, fear of what anyone else thinks. I mean, it's up to you. If your mind is straight, you got your mindset together, you'll be fine.
Yeah. So Ted and I we always say that when we started out the 30-minute hour podcast, we were on the friends and family plan.
That's it.
Because only our friends and family were downloading the episodes.
That's it. Then they let me down, though. Your friends and family start letting you down. They start doing other things on Monday evening. Like, what do you mean? You're not going to be on the show today. Man, I had a long day, Ted. Ain't nobody watching your show today.
It was bad when your mom was like, no, Eric, that's all right. I'm good.
I'm good tonight. I've watched it 27 times.
Son, I'm good. That's all right.
That's
all right. Yeah, so this idea of the fear of failure, like to me, like the only real failure is failing to try. That's the real failure, failing to try. And if you quit, just think all those things that you went through, all the struggles, all the sleepless nights and the ups, all that would be for nothing if you quit. You just have to keep that in mind. So that's just a good perspective to maintain. The real failure is failing to try. Maisha, what are your thoughts?
I too was like Ted and really had no fears. And then I think I started, and then my son was born. So my son was born, and that's when all the fears of the world comes on the parents' shoulders. It is amazing. You fear people, places, things, ants, bugs, everything. So for me, when I made the leap, I made the leap from full time to entrepreneurship, my fear was not being able to provide a roof over the head, my son's head, food on the table. So for me, when I went from a fearless person to a fearful person, it kind of motivated me, right? Because I knew I had to take care of another human being, and I was in charge of his well-being and ensuring that, all that we talked about before. So I think I used that failure to say to good, right? So, I got to call these people. I have to call these clients. I have to call people. I have to make appointments. I have to do all those things that we've already talked about: networking, sales, email, marketing, all that I'm doing for clients, I have to do for myself. So I didn't let the fear stop me, but I think I used that as a motivator to failing, because what would happen? Where would I be right now if I stopped, right? So I use that as a motivator to get things moving. And there's nothing like seeing your child as a motivator. Nothing like seeing him playing and happy and knowing that you're doing all that you can do to make your life successful. So he really did help me become unstoppable. That fear of failure.
No, I agree, Maisha, that having kids gives you a whole other level of motivation. Because my son, he don't want to hear any of that stuff, right? It's like he's like, look, when am I getting my PS5?
Mm-hmm.
Well, son, I'm afraid that what if this happens? Okay, Daddy, when am I getting my PS5? So you have this motivation to provide for your kids. So certainly that can help you to overcome the fears. I just found my motivation went up to a whole other level when those two little people showed up.
Absolutely. And the good thing, or where we're struggling now, is he didn't know all that fear that I had. So I'm now sharing that with him. Like, there were times, Amari, when we only had $100 in the account, and I'm calling people to put money in the account. He has no clue. So I don't think he understands where money comes from. Again, Amari, if you're listening, get a job. Start a business.
Oh, he know where money come from. It come from you. That's where money come from. He got that down. Now, where you get it from, that's on you.
Another podcast, because that's funny. But I say that to say, we're now having conversations, which I think are helping him frame what was going on and talking about that fear and what I've done and how we got to this point where we are today. And it's actually been great. I mean, to have a conversation with my 18-year-old about money and overcoming fears and everything that I've done in the past to do that.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Sharon.
Yep. So I'm going to start out with fail. First attempt in learning. That is something that I tell my students each and every day. Failure is a part of the journey to success. One of the things, there's this book called Failure is Not an Option. And for many years, when I first became a principal, I would use that as my theme, right? Failure is not an option. It was not until I became an entrepreneur that I realized it really is an option. And that is the only way that you're going to develop and grow. Because if you are continuously succeeding, you're really not growing. You're being successful, but you're not developing and growing because you learn from failure. And so that simple term that I tell my little elementary students, that when you fail, it is the first attempt in learning. And so that means that you try again, you learn from the mistake that you made, and you do better, right? And that's a continuous process. So you have to embrace failure. That's the one thing that people have to realize. You don't shy away from failure and, oh my God, I failed. Learn from it. Learn, and so that's it. You either succeed or learn, not fail. The next thing that I wanted to say is, when we are afraid of failing, you look at, and many people have put it out there, how many times Michael Jordan did this, how many times, all of this. That's the option that you have to take in order to do better, to grow, to go further. And so when I first started watching Lisa Nichols a long time ago, many years ago, she would say this one thing that has stuck with me: with chattered teeth and not need, do it afraid. That means, you know how you shake and tremble? You can be trembling, your teeth can be chattering, but go and do it anyway. And so you have to work through that fear. You have to learn how to do that thing, even afraid. Don't say, I'm not going to be afraid. Just do it afraid. And then at some point, you're not going to be afraid of that thing. And so my message for that one is just to embrace failure and learn from it.
You said a lot there. I mean, embrace failure and learn from it. The FAIL acronym, first attempt at learning. First attempt in learning. Yeah, now that's fantastic information. Sometimes you just have to do it afraid. And one of the things, before we get to this coffee break, that I like to say is that you have to change that question. The question I started with, well, what if this goes wrong? You have to change that from what if to even if. So even if this doesn't go as planned, I'm still going to move on to the next thing. Even if I don't get the contract, I'm going to learn from this and I'll be better going forward. So just that little word change from what if to even if, that can help you to overcome a fear of failure, because everything is just a mindset. That's really what it is. You see people on this high level, they just have a certain mindset, and they have more of an even if mindset, not necessarily a what if mindset. All right. So I think we've knocked down 2 of the 4 barriers that we talked about at the open of this show. So now it is time for a coffee break. So for those of you who are listening on the podcasting platforms, you can't see that we're actually drinking coffee right now. But just to kind of use your imagination, or you can actually go to the What Now movement on Facebook, and you can check us out on YouTube and all that good stuff. But it is time for the coffee break. And on our coffee break today, it's sponsored by a special podcasting masterclass. This is free. A free podcasting masterclass that we're going to do on Saturday, April 15th, 2023. And it's going to be titled How to Monetize Your Podcast and Explode Your Downloads. And we'll be sharing the principles, the same principles we used for the 30-minute hour podcast that got us from the friends and family plan to over 660,000 downloads now. And the show ranks globally in the top 2% of all podcasts when it comes to popularity. But again, it was a specific process and methodology that got us to this point. First off, thank you for those of you who shared the show. We appreciate that for sure. And we're going to share the methodology. So this is something that you don't want to miss. So if you have a podcast now and you're looking to grow to that next level and monetize it and all that good stuff, and I would even say, even if you're thinking about launching a podcast, this is something that can help you as well, with some ideas, and know that you're not going it alone. So again, how to monetize your podcast and explode your downloads. That's going to be April 15th. More details to come as far as the specific link that you can go to register for this.
You can register today.
All right.
I'm taking the fear of failure out of the equation. It's not perfect today, but you can definitely register today, and we will make it better as we go along with more information, special guests, all the stuff that you need. But you can register today. You're listening today, and over the next few months, I guess, till April 15th.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, register today, right now. So, Maisha, where can the people go to register today? Because they're on the edge of their seat.
Yes, if you would like to register for the How to Monetize and Explode Your Downloads Masterclass on April 15th, you need to go to the What Now Movement website on the events page.
Fantastic. That's
Did I
the
say
What
that again?
Now Movement.
You can go to the What Now Movement website. I'm not going to do the URL. WhatNowMovement.com, and go to our events page, and you can register today.
Register today. So we're going to walk you step by step through that process. It's 10 a.m. April 15th. We're going to talk about that process. All right. So that is our coffee break. We are back on track. We're talking about the 4 barriers to becoming an unstoppable entrepreneur. We're going through the principles in my book, The Discipline of Now, 12 practical principles to overcome procrastination. You can pick it up on Amazon. You can go to ericmtwigs.com and pick it up. But that's what we're talking about. So we're now on barrier number 3, because we've already talked about the fear of success. We've talked about the fear of failure. Now we're going to talk about the fear of criticism. That's a common thing. A lot of times people don't want to jump out there, put themselves out there, because they're afraid that their work is going to get criticized. And one of the things I think it helps is to understand where people are coming from when they're criticizing you, right? A lot of times they are projecting their limitations on you, right? Yeah, so they're scared to jump out there, so they're projecting that limit and that scarcity mindset on you. So you can't necessarily take to heart and run with every criticism that you get, right? And it also helps to have, a trusted network, a trusted mentor, coach that can give you honest feedback. But fear of criticism is definitely something that holds people back and keeps them from moving forward and keeps them stuck. I'll throw it to Dr. Sharon as we're talking about the fear of criticism. What are your thoughts and experiences there?
Yeah, I think people who fear criticism, it is a lack of scarcity. It is some level of insecurity, I would have to say. You have to know how to receive and who you're receiving from, because everything you can't take to heart, right? Some criticism is definitely for your improvement, and some is for hate, right? I hate to say that, but and you just have to be able to know the difference. Like they say, take the meat and throw away the bone, so you take what's good for you. And one thing about criticism for me, I would say, is you have to seek improvement and not approval. Because when you're seeking approval, then that's where it's really going to cut deep, right? Because if people are criticizing you, then that means they're not approved, they're not approving you. So you don't seek approval, just seek improvement. And then you can take the criticism as it comes. Take what you can take and leave the rest out. You don't take everything to heart. That's what I would say.
That's a tweetable quote there, Ted.
You thought you had improvement. You thought you had Dr. Sharon. Dr. Sharon thought about it for a minute, then she warmed that thing up and just turned that thing. You thought you had her. You thought you had her. Good one, Dr. Sharon.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a tweetable quote. Seek improvement and not approval. And I think if you do that, that's going to get you past that fear of criticism. Because, there are a lot of haters out there. And the more your profile increases, the more haters you'll run into.
My thing is I think it's criticism versus feedback. Criticism sounds like a negative thing. I criticize Maisha. Ted is criticizing me versus Ted gave me some feedback. right? So that's the thing is criticism versus feedback.
And so again,
Right?
Ted, so what do you see as the big differences between criticism and feedback?
I just think criticism just sounds negative.
Mm-hmm.
It just sounds negative, right? And, you know, he's criticizing me. Feedback is he gave me some feedback. He gave me some insight, right? Something to think about, right? It just, you know, some positive criticism. I mean, criticism just sounds like it's, you know, it's negative, right? Feedback is, hey, this is something I'm looking at, something I'm thinking. But at the end of the day, what you can remember, you have to always remember is it's your thing. So whether they criticize you, give you feedback, you still, at the end of the day, decide whether you want to embrace whatever it was or not, because it's your business. It's your book, right? You know, I can tell you, Eric, yeah, I read your book. I would have done that totally differently. I would have put this chapter here. I would have done this. I would have more of this, less of that. Well, it's not your book. It's Eric's book, right? So Eric decides how he wants to do this. Now, if he decides that you gave him some feedback, right, and then in the next book you decide, yeah, let me talk a little bit about that because Maisha, you know, gave some insight around that, and I think that's something that, you know, would be good. Or you can just let it go in one ear and out the other. It's on you on what you do with it when it's your thing. You make the meal the way you want to make the meal, right? So yeah, I had a situation once. I think I mentioned it. I had an advisor. He was working with me, and at the time, my former business partner. And I think I mentioned he had talked to a couple people within the company, and he put together this folder that had feedback that looked like criticism. Everybody had something to say, how I should do it this way, that way, da 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 da. And I was looking at this, and I was like, man, you thought I was the worst person in the world. But then I had to start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, who paying their checks? Right? Because all they do is say, did it hit my account or not? I have to figure out a way to make sure that they get a check, right? And who was driving the business, right? Who was making sure that things was happening? It's real easy when you're on that other side to be able to give your, criticism and all that. So yeah, it was interesting to read the stuff, and I had to, at first I was like, man, Maisha, I was like, gee, then it'd be like, wait a second. Well, no wonder this person said this about me, because I'm on him or her to get their job done, right? So I look at those situations and be like, I think you said earlier, Eric, it comes down to the place that the person's in that's giving you the criticism, right? Or the feedback, right? You got to see if it's from a good place. I think when it's from a good place, they really think about how they present it to you, so that it's not something that is, I guess hurtful in the way they say it.
But, and speaking of that, Ted, I'm sitting here thinking, because I love analogies, and I'm thinking of a chef cooking, right? And people criticizing the dish. But if a number of people are saying the same thing, you know what I'm saying? Like if I make a dish and 5 people say, oh, this is too salty, right? You know what I'm saying? So at some point, you're going to have to okay, maybe I need to hold off on the salt a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Right.
Put the salt down, Maisha. Put the salt down.
You may not think.
Everybody got high blood pressure.
But if you have a number of people saying the same thing, it just would be advantageous to take another look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I think you should always be open.
Right.
Open for it. People are like, oh, you're not open for it. Well, it doesn't mean I'm not open for it just because I don't do what you say.
Right.
Right. Because but I want you to keep giving me stuff, because I may not do the first 2, but the third thing I might be like,
that's true.
Yeah. But like you said, if multiple people are saying it's too salty, you might want to ease up off the salt before you kill everyone.
Yeah, that's the beauty of feedback, right? A lot of times you can see patterns, and it's like Dr. Sharon said, salty, 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 salty. Maybe there's a pattern here. Maybe it's something you need to look at. Maybe it's not a personal attack. But no, great points. Ted, you talk about knowing the difference between criticism and feedback. You talk about considering the source. I think that's critical. I remember I had someone giving me some tough feedback, and I took it as criticism. But then I looked, and she was very, very successful in the same space that I'm in, and like she's killing it, and she's giving me this feedback. So I had to swallow some pride and lean in. And later I realized a lot of the things she said were spot on, and I made the changes, and it helped. So I do think you do need to consider the source when you're getting criticism or getting feedback or what have you. All right, Maisha.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the fear of criticism, I think, is more internal to how we are in the world. I think it's easy for us I think when people are coming at you with criticism or feedback, how you take it in is probably what we're talking about. So for me, I was lucky enough early in my career to have a very critical boss, and I would put my heart and soul into a press release and love it so much, but when it came back, it was red. And so I had to say to myself, we're just going to learn, take that constructive criticism and feedback and do it better. But I definitely admit to, like, good Lord, he didn't like anything that I wrote. So for he and I coming to the middle where I can say to him, thank you for the feedback. Here's the next version. And it had less red. So we got to know red was an important part of that improvement that all of you have been talking about, right? So you have to be able to take the criticism and move forward with it, right? Especially if it's your boss, he's not trying to hurt you. He's trying to help you get better. And if he is trying to hurt you, you will get better, because at some point I could send him a press release and it was like, oh, you just missed a comma. I took that as a win, right? Because I went from multiple reds to a comma. That is me growing, and that is me getting better, and that is me able to take that skill to the next time, right? So I think that it really is an internal thing on how we view it, whether it's criticism or feedback, but letting go of that fear and taking it all in and applying it to your next thing that you're working on, your next position, your next project, is most crucial thing for us to do to get over that fear.
That's great.
For me, I just kind of take it that you're never there.
Right.
Like you're always continuing to improve. I don't care who you are. You're the president of the United States. There's millions of people that think you should do something differently. Your coach or your team, right? When the plays work, you're like, oh, he's great. When the play doesn't work, what was he doing? He should have done this. I knew it. Why did you pass? You should have ran. I mean, run the ball. You should have passed. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that just is what happens. So you're never there. It's this continuous improvement. People giving you different stuff. You decide, what are you going to put in your meal, Dr. Sharon? You're going to take some of the salt out. Okay. You're going to do it, or, you're going to add some lemon, whatever it is you're going to do. You're trying to continue to make the meal right? You better. You're the meal. You're going to continue to make yourself better, and you're going to take some stuff from people, and just because it's worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you, right? Like, Eric and I, we have two totally different ways of doing stuff, right? And one way that Eric does stuff is the way he does and the way I do it, but that makes us a good team because we both have different ways and different perspectives. So you're not going to be the same as everyone else, but at least, again, be open.
Exactly.
For the feedback, be open to hear it, right?
And for me right now, I didn't know that part of my new position was speaking in front of groups of hundreds of people. So I had media training, and they're like, well, let's send us the video. I'm like, I'm not going to send you the video on my first 3 engagements because I'm already nervous enough. But once I start doing it and get comfortable, then I'll be open to the feedback, because then I'll know what I think I need to improve upon. So this fear of criticism is really, really, really true for me, but it's also me helping to manage how I'm going to get better. Because I know that where I started and where I'm going to be is going to be fantastic.
No, that's great. I mean, and it was said earlier, seek improvement and not approval. I think if you're always looking for improvement, and the thing is, like I've had, like you, Maisha, I've had those critical bosses, but I know I got it right when even they would say, "Eric, that was great. Oh my goodness," because I know if it wasn't, they would tell me.
Exactly.
So yeah, seek improvement and not approval. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And now we're finally at the final barrier, and that is the fear of the unknown. And I've observed an interesting trend. I think I'm going to mix it up, and I think I'm going to go back to Ted here. But Ted, I've noticed this trend that people prefer a known devil over an unknown angel when it comes to most things.
Mm.
That's it.
Hello? Did we?
Yeah,
I sound like the Wi-Fi might have gone out or something. I'll repeat that just in case I was freezing on my end. People tend to prefer a known devil versus an unknown angel, meaning that you'll stay in a bad work situation when you feel led to start a business, but starting the business is the unknown, right? Or launching the podcast is the unknown. And we tend to have this fear of uncertainty and the unknown, and we need to get past that. So Ted, I'll throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on this whole idea of the fear of the unknown?
I mean, the unknown. I mean, you just don't know what's behind door number 3, right? And there's it could be some good stuff in there, or maybe not, right? I mean that's the thing that chance, Maisha, Dr. Sharon, that it may not be a good thing back there, right? The business may flop, but like you said, Maisha, you got bills to pay. You got another human you got to make sure is good, right? I mean, so yeah, and that whole unknown thing, I mean, it's a lot of people have a hard time with that. But I think you ought to, you got to be smart too, right? I don't think leave your job today and go out there and start your business. And no, get your business going on the side, right? Build it up. I remember my grandmother, when she was living years ago, when I started the company, and I was working for the government, and she knew I started the company, and she said, "It's great, you started the company, but don't leave that government job." How's it going? Oh, Grandma, it's going good. That's good, boy, baby. Keep on doing it. But don't leave that government job, because it's good. Keep them both. So what ended up happening was, and I said, man, if I ever leave, I better not let these folks know, right? I keep that to myself. And so I remember one of my first contracts that kind of got things going was a contract with my agency. So my routine was still the same. I was still kind of going to the same building, same area, getting up in the morning, dressing. So it was probably close to a year that I was already doing this full time, and they didn't know. Yeah, no. So then I was like, yeah, one day I told them, I left the government about 9 months ago. Oh, okay, all right. Well, I see you still, like you're still eating. Look like you're still eating, and he ain't lost no weight. He's still thick. You know what I'm saying? You all right. And so then from that point it was, how's the business going? At that point, I had transitioned into it and haven't looked back since. And so people sometimes say, "Oh man, have you regretted that you left the government?" I'm like, well, I know where I could have been had I stayed, but no, I didn't regret it, because I know I had gotten to a point where I like to be kind of in control. I got tired of sitting in meetings and listening to folk talking and saying stuff. Y'all know me. After a while, y'all ain't talking about nothing. We ain't going nowhere. We've been talking about the same stuff, for 4 months, right? So now it's like, okay, you make the move, and if it doesn't work, I'm not one to sit and cry over it. Hey, I get up, get up, dust yourself off, lick your wounds, whatever, and then get back at it. you know, and I prefer that. So it would be really difficult for me ever to go back to, you know, working for someone. Like I'd gotten to that place. So I don't regret it, you know, but everything that we all talked about, the fear of success and change and, you know, all that stuff. I'm not, you know, am I good enough and all of that? I mean, sure, we experience a little bit of all of that, but you know, once you get into it and you know, you're all in, you're all in.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So Maisha.
Yeah, I've never had the fear of the unknown. In that sense, I've always been willing to move, change strategy, get a different job, start a new business. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I was like, I've been talking about a lot of fears, but that was not one that's particular to me. I think anything that challenges you grows you. So taking on a new position at this time after being 10 years entrepreneur, why not? Do I think I can do it? Of course. Growing the business at the same time, I'm going to work on it. So the unknown has never been something that scared me to try anything. I'm a roller coaster person. I like to travel. I'll travel by myself. All that stuff is just me growing as a person. So that's my fear of unknown take.
See, Maisha's just built differently. You know, she's
Yeah.
stuff out there.
Just a little. That's just one thing. I had. You'll think I had a child on my own. I did a lot of things on my own that could have been different had I not made that choice. So I'm learning actually. If you want to share this more and bring people in to help more, because I don't want to have that strong Black woman syndrome either. But yeah, the fear of unknown. I'll go for it. I will go for it in a minute and see what happens, as opposed to not go for it and be like, why didn't I do it? Why didn't I start a business? Why didn't I raise a family? Why didn't I buy a house? Why didn't I do all that stuff? So, as Ted said, God is on my side. So that kind of eliminates a lot of that fear from me.
That's a great point you bring up, because the last thing I want is to be like 85 years old asking myself that question or those questions. You know, why didn't I launch that podcast? Well, what would have happened if I did go for it? Well, oh man. Ugh. Yeah.
You played it safe. I played it safe the whole way. I played it safe. No risk.
I didn't launch to the unknown. I was safe the whole time. Right.
I was the one who started the company with I knew I could do it because I knew I had enough contacts, but I didn't have a website. I didn't have a client. I just said, here's what I want to do. Make it happen.
That's it. And that, you know, and everyone's journey is different.
Yep.
Right. You got someone here that went to Harvard and all that. And you got someone here that just has a high school diploma or dropped out. Right. At the end of the day, whichever way whatever's in your box, that's what's in your box. You got to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And you want to keep adding some stuff to the box to get better, read some books, go to school, do all these different things, take more training class. You'll do whatever you got to do. But you got to get it done.
For sure. Okay, Dr. Sharon.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I'm sort of mixed in this one because I embrace change. I love change, right? But I like to know what's going to happen. So I got to figure out what that means for me, seriously, because I am the person that needs to know what's happening. Like, you know, a drama, a scary movie, like I can't watch it unless I know how it's going to end.
Oh,
right? Wow. No, seriously, that's me. I'm the person.
Did they die? I didn't know if they died or not.
Listen,
Did they make it out?
That goes to the internet to find out what happened, and then I can watch it.
Lord.
I'm start at the end of the book before I can go to the beginning. That's something. I don't know. We got to figure out what that is, but but it is some level of the fear unknown for some reason. I don't know what that is, but I embrace change. I love change. So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe different compartments of my life. Maybe there's a difference because entrepreneurially speaking, I will make the change professionally, job change. Like you said, I don't have a problem with doing that, but there are certain things that I've got to know ahead what's happening before I move forward. So I don't know what that's about. So that's my piece on that.
You want that risk minimized.
Right. I think that's
That's all that is. If I flip this coin and it better land on head. But it could land on tail. No. I'm just gonna place this coin down. I need to see the top up.
And that's so interesting because I can watch the same I don't watch horror movies, but thriller, and still get excited during the same area. So I think it's the journey that I enjoy when you do embrace the fear of unknown. I can embrace that pretty well, but I don't know if I need to know the end.
Yeah, I've got to know. Did he make it or not? I gotta know. Because I have to prepare myself. I'm serious. I have to prepare my emotions.
That is funny.
I love it. This is so great.
I'll tell you.
I'm gonna tell you,
this is an awesome conversation.
If you are an entrepreneur and you stay in it long enough, there's gonna be times when you're gonna be like, I don't know how this is gonna happen, and then something happens, and you're like, ugh. That's why for me, it's got to be, I have to have faith, right?
Yeah,
I gotta have faith because stuff doesn't always look like it's gonna add up.
That's
right. You go to 10 banks, and all of them look at your stuff and say no.
That's true.
And then something happens, and you be like, whew. And 9 out of 10 people said no.
Yeah.
I just need one person
to say yes.
To say yes. And so that's what makes it fun though, Doc Sharon. You just want to know the end of the movie. You take all the fun out of it. Sometimes you got, do they make it back? No. They all die. That happened in this.
As long as she doesn't spoil it for everybody else, I think I'm fine.
Right.
And I don't.
Everybody else in there like this. She like, I know what's gonna happen. They gonna make it out.
I would never go to the movies with Dr. Sharon because I'm like,
that's it. Dr. Sharon, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Baby, it's gonna be all right. That's funny. They're gonna make it.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Now this has been an awesome episode. This is one you want to go back and listen to and replay and take notes. It's critical that we break these barriers down. I mean, one final point on the unknown is that we have to remember that legacy and risk go hand in hand. Anybody that you think has left a great legacy, they took a risk. They stepped out in unknown and uncharted waters, and now we all know their name. And I just like kind of goes back to what I said earlier. I always try to go back to my 85-year-old self. And if I'm facing an unknown and I don't want to do it, I ask, what would 85-year-old Eric tell me to do? Would 85-year-old Eric tell me to play it safe and oh no? Or would 85-year-old Eric say, you better do it, you better give it a try, you will regret it. You'll be sitting with your grandkids in regret. So that's just something to think about on that. We've overcome these 4 barriers to becoming. Go ahead, Ted.
One last thing I want to mention on that is just the whole pandemic, right? No business owner knew that was going to happen.
Nope. There's
no way you could even have planned for that, right? And so many things happened around that I mean, there's always there's always going to be that unknown.
Yes.
There's always going to be that unknown. So, yeah. But sorry, I know he's about to close it on out. So go. I apologize.
No, good comment. So as we close, please don't forget April 15th, 10 a.m. Eastern time, a free masterclass on how to monetize your podcast and explode your downloads. We share the step-by-step of what we did to grow the 30-minute hour podcast. There were over 660,000 total downloads and hit the top 2%, ranking the top 2% of all podcasters on the planet. So make sure, because everybody's doing the 2 side, make sure you register. You can go to the whatnowmovement.com and click the events tab to register. Make sure you register today to hold your seat. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the book, The Discipline of Now, 12 Practical Principles to Overcome Procrastination. Maisha, anything else the people need to be thinking about before we go?
No.
All right. Thank you. Oh, man. Well, that is our time on this episode of Coffee and Conversation. We thank you for listening to us. And until next time, have a great one.